Watchers call. Whispers from the eternal void.
At first light, the Blood Sea climbed the breakwater of Basilica Dry Dock St. Dercito by 12 meters, defying gravity like a red wall held in suspension, while Vox traffic crackled with transmissions time-stamped 3 hours in the future, our own voices reporting events that had not yet occurred. I am Interrogator Lex Severin Hale, Ordo Malleus Adjunct embedded with Mechanicus Expedition Thalassa Prime, and I witnessed both phenomena in the same heartbeat, understanding immediately that Pelagus IX had broken a fundamental rule of the Emperor's ordered universe. My mandate arrived through astropathic relay at 0400 hours, bearing inquisitorial seals and the weight of inevitable duty. Assess, contain, or sanction the anomaly before it engulfs Hive Tether Pharos within 72 hours. 17 billion souls hung in the balance, their fate measured in the impossible mathematics of water that climbs when it should kneel. Time, however, had become suspect currency on this accursed world. Ash gales swept inland from Mare Sanguinum, carrying the taste of copper and burnt offerings while stinging exposed skin like powdered glass. The humidity pressed against flesh with fever-thick insistence, condensing on cold steel despite the desert climate beyond the dry dock's walls. Most disturbing was the silence. No gulls wheeled above quays where they had nested for 3 centuries, their absence making the loading cranes seem taller, their cables less musical, as if the very ecosystem had fled in anticipation of horrors yet to manifest. An 8-beat drum thudded from the bay with the steadiness of a parade and the restraint of a funeral. The rhythm seemed to resonate not through air but through bone and faith, vibrating up through deck plates and into the soles of boots. Dockers worked in hushed coordination, their eyes cutting toward the suspended water between whispered phrases. The blood remembers. When pressed for meaning, they claimed ignorance, yet their lips moved in perfect synchronization, and their fingers tied knots in counts of 8 without conscious thought. Chronometers across the facility stuttered, losing 8 seconds at regular intervals before correcting themselves with mechanical embarrassment. Reality hiccuped around us as personnel began vanishing from sealed compartments. No signs of struggle, no breach of integrity, simply absent between one head count and the next. Sergeant Havel of the 82nd Vostroyan reported 3 men missing from locked barracks, their bedrolls still warm, their weapons still racked, as if they had simply stepped out of existence mid-thought. Octagonal rust scabs appeared overnight on the quay's metalwork, each precisely 8-sided, despite the random nature of corrosion. When scraped away, they reformed within minutes, bleeding ferrous tears that tasted of sacramental wine. The pattern repeated across the docks, 8-sided formations in puddles, 8-beat rhythms in machinery, 8-second delays in Vox responses. Numbers gained weight and meaning beyond coincidence. My team assembled with the grim efficiency of those who understand their mortality, to be currency in the Emperor's service. Magos Bathymancer Talak 9. Roe emerged from the Mechanicus enclave, mechadendrites twitching in binary agitation as his augmetic sensors registered phenomena beyond standard parameters. The machine spirit's whisper of old sins, he intoned through Vox grills, and the water sings back in frequencies that predate the Omnissiah's first prayer. Voidmaster Livia Strake commanded our vessel with 3 decades of experience navigating the sector's most treacherous passages, her fighter's economy of motion faltering only when chronometers betrayed her calculations. Confessor Isambard prepared sanctified oils and pressure hymnals, his litanies against the abyss a constant counterpoint to the binary chatter of our minimal engine-seer crew. The cathedral submarine litany of depths rested in her berth like a devotional offering, bronze hull gleaming with sacred oils and protective wards. Her cathedral spires rose above the waterline, while her keel extended deep into blessed darkness. a marriage of surface prayer and abyssal meditation. Ballast chambers echoed with whispered canticles of descent, while pressure-sealed chapels housed relics necessary for deep-water communion with the Emperor's will. Environmental sensors registered impossible readings, atmospheric pressure climbing, while barometric instruments showed steady decline, gravity fluctuating in localized pockets where debris fell upward before correcting course. The litany's machine spirits remained strangely docile, their usual chorus of awakening reduced to uncertain whispers that required repeated benedictions to maintain proper function. As we prepared for embarkation, the future coughed into the present. Vox//RHO telemetry. Grav readout inverted 0.8G//origin unknown. Hull toll. 8 strokes without bell pulls. The data burned green across my slate, then scrolled back as if embarrassed by its temporal transgression. Talash witnessed the same anomaly, his optical arrays cycling through spectra that revealed nothing while recording everything. Temperature readings fluctuated between fever heat and mortuary cold as the ash gales intensified, carrying fragments of prayers in languages that predated Imperial Gothic. The Blood Sea maintained its impossible suspension, neither advancing nor retreating, waiting with geological patience for signals we could not perceive. The warm copper scent began as a whisper in the air, growing stronger with each passing minute. The litany of depths prepared to receive us, her gangway extending like a bronze tongue with rivets that resembled taste buds. The metal felt warm beneath our boots, despite air temperatures reading cold as medici slabs. Somewhere within her sanctified mass, something knocked. Not the random percussion of loose cables or overtensioned plates, but ceremony itself made audible. Then the bronze hull tolled without bell pulls being drawn, 8 heavy strokes that resonated through water and steel with the weight of funeral knells. Each toll seemed to call something from the depths, vibrations traveling not through air but through faith and bone. A sealed hatch ahead exhaled warm copper scent from the empty interior, breathing like a lung that had never known air. Embarkation began as sacrament aboard the Litany of Depths, where pressure gauges hung in gilded frames like reliquaries displaying the sacred mathematics of descent. Ballast tanks served as baptistries, their bronze fonts filled with sanctified water that would carry our prayers into the abyss while maintaining equilibrium between surface worship and abyssal communion. The air thickened with iron-laced humidity that condensed on cold surfaces despite heating systems, while deck plates radiated chill like mortuary slabs beneath our boots. Magos Talak 9. Rowe intoned Binharik startup sequences through Vox grills, while Confessor Isambard responded with litanies against the abyss, their voices weaving mathematical harmony that awakened the submarine's machine spirits through layers of prayer and programming. Code and creed, calculus and confession. Every system received both benediction and binary cant in antiphonal precision. The ritual required exact timing to convince ancient cogitators to accept our presence as blessed rather than intrusive. Sergeant Havel conducted weapons checks with military efficiency, tempered by growing unease. Lazarifals received blessed oils, while frag grenades underwent pressure blessing to maintain explosive sanctity at depth. Firing arcs were painted across bulkheads in grease pencil, crossfire lanes mapped with terse brevity, fallback positions numbered rather than named. Watertight integrity drills proceeded until knuckles bled beneath gloves, hatches slamming on 8-count intervals, while compartments sealed and unsealed with ceremonial precision. The machine spirits remained disturbingly quiet, their usual chorus reduced to uncertain whispers requiring repeated benedictions. Auspex icons grayed out for 8 heartbeats at regular intervals, displaying null returns where sensors should have registered hull thickness and water density. The phenomena suggested not mechanical failure but deliberate withholding, as if the litany's consciousness had developed selective blindness to protect itself from perceiving truths too terrible for blessed cogitators to process. Negative space manifested as profound absence throughout our preparations. No cable creaks accompanied the submarine's gentle rocking. No servitor chatter filled silence until directly commanded. No random mechanical sounds provided expected audio backdrop. The quiet pressed against eardrums with physical weight, making whispered prayers sound like shouts. Even gulls that should have cried above our berth remained absent, extending unnatural. Silence beyond our hull. Hull knocks sounded precisely once per minute. 8 beats never aligned with engine rhythms or machinery cycles. Each percussion originated from outside the pressure hull, as if something in the water maintained communication through maritime Morse, predating imperial naval codes. Crewmen paused when knocks sounded, heads tilting toward nearest bulkheads, though none admitted hearing anything when questioned. Telemetry updates arrived with increasing urgency. Auspex Drish cavitation. Model: 8 anomalous voids beneath keel. The readings showed bubble formations maintaining perfect spherical geometry, despite pressure differentials that should have collapsed them instantly. Gravlog: reversal spike, 00, colon 00 colon 08. Gravitational fluctuations occurred in 8-second intervals, making local spacetime hiccup like damaged chronometers attempting accuracy despite fundamental corruption. A routine maintenance cut on deckhand Corvus demonstrated environmental corruption's extent. His blood beaded upward after a simple palm slice, droplets refusing to acknowledge gravity while floating toward overhead like crimson prayer beads seeking heaven. The fluid refused clotting despite 2 degrees Celsius temperatures, maintaining liquid consistency while defying basic physics. Corvus stared at his ascending blood with the expression of a man watching his soul depart, face pale with recognition that proximity to whatever waited beneath mare sanguinum had corrupted his very essence. Sergeant Havel discovered weapons arranged in octagonal star formation, despite personally securing them in regulation racks. Each bayonet pointed toward the compartment's center with mathematical precision, edges gleaming with condensation that tasted of copper when inadvertently touched to lips. The formation required conscious effort to disrupt, weapons seemingly drawn back toward star pattern when attention wandered. Military discipline prevented panic, but Havel's hands shook redistributing blades into standard configurations that lasted only until the next hull knock sounded. Voidmaster Strake calculated descent vectors while monitoring atmospheric readings fluctuating beyond acceptable parameters. Her charts bore corrections in red ink that seemed to write themselves, coarse adjustments appearing in her handwriting despite having no memory of making notations. The submarine's machine spirits accepted navigation inputs with reluctant compliance, as if anticipating destinations they preferred not to reach. Confessor Isambard prepared sanctified oils and pressure hymnals, devotions taking desperate intensity as corruption manifested around us. Sacred unguents separated into component elements without explanation. Blessed water developing iron undertones, suggesting contamination by forces beyond material chemistry. His prayers grew longer, incorporating protective verses against influences existing in theological texts, but never requiring practical application. Engineering preparations continued, despite mounting anomalies. The litany's bronze hull maintained unauthorized tolling, 8 strokes per sequence with intervals matching no known liturgical timing. Each toll resonated through superstructure, with harmonic frequencies making teeth ache and prayer beads vibrate against robes. Sound carried implications of ceremony and summons, as if something beneath waves maintained communication through percussion, transcending noise to become language itself. Embarkation readiness confirmed, Strake reported, hand hovering over helm controls. Weapons secured and blessed, Havel added, stacking magazines with commitment's dry clack. The Emperor protects, whispered Isambard, kissing the deck. Talash extended mechadendrites toward master switches, additional fingers unfolding like mechanical flower petals. By the Omnissiah's leave, initiate descent protocols. Machine spirits, wake and remember your purpose in the deep. The Voxnet coughed static twice. Then my own voice emerged with crystal clarity despite transmission distortion, speaking with inflections and cadence unmistakably mine yet originating from temporal coordinates hours beyond our present moment. Severin, do not open the eighth seal. The litany of depths pushed into Mare Sanguinum beneath ash gales that hissed across her bronze superstructure like sandblaster spray. Each metallic particle striking with percussion that rang through hull plates in staccato hymns of approach. Iron filings fell with the rain, sizzling against hot stack vents while creating geometric patterns on horizontal surfaces that defied random precipitation. The sea itself bore corruption in its essence, no longer water, but something thicker, redder, staining our decks in coffee-dark swirls that pulsed with independent circulation and resisted blessed scrubbing. Voidmaster Strake maintained formation with escort skiffs through instruments alone, visibility reduced to mere meters by the metallic storm. Her charts bore constant correction as magnetic compasses spun without reference, seeking true north through interference that suggested massive ferrous deposits beneath the waves. The escort vessels responded to Vox commands with increasing delay, their acknowledgments arriving seconds after transmission, as if signals traveled through medium denser than standard atmosphere. Hold formation, Strake commanded, gloved fingers dancing across helm controls. Drop point Omicron in 11 minutes. Her voice carried the dry authority of 3 decades navigating treacherous passages, though her calculations required constant revision as gravitational anomalies pulled us off course in 8-degree increments. The sea fought our passage not with waves but with viscous resistance, as if we sailed through blood rather than brine. Uncrewed lifeboats rode high in octagonal gyres, their formation too precise for natural currents, yet too organic for mechanical arrangement. Each vessel contained devotional ribbons tied in 8 simple knots by windless forces, the silk strips moving with independent animation, despite absent breeze. No distress beacons sounded, no signs of struggle marked their abandonment. They simply rode empty circles in mathematical precision around dark water that refused reflection. We brought one alongside with a pole hook. The hull knocked 8 times against ours, not the sea's doing, then went quiet. Inside, devotional ribbons hung limp, ends snipped clean, with faint prints of fingers on the wood, as if someone had pressed their hands there and been erased, leaving only heat. Telemetry cut through our observations like a cough during Mass. Auspex. Ping, beacon ID/Crimson. Orison-2, depth 3,100 meters. Status active. The characters crawled green across my slate and burned themselves into memory. Strake lifted her head and stared at nothing for exactly 1 beat. Talak's mechadendrites froze mid-gesture, then continued slower, as if reciting formulae with new entries. Impossible, Confessor Isambard whispered, making the sign of the Aquila. The Orison burned before my great-grandfather prayed his first catechism. Astartes, strike cruiser Crimson Orison, lost 3 centuries prior during the Pelagic Crusade. Imperial records placed her destruction in the Ghoul stars, yet her beacon pulsed from depths that should have crushed any surviving technology into metallic prayer paste. The transmission carried authentication protocols current to our present date, suggesting either temporal displacement or something maintaining her systems across centuries of submersion. Marine life remained absent from our scopes, creating ecological negative space where sensors registered water but no living creatures within detection range. The sea maintained perfect sterility despite conditions that should have supported abundant biomass. Even bacterial readings returned null, as if the water itself had been sanctified against life through processes beyond Imperial understanding. A servo skull bobbed face down in our wake, Adam's apple to the sky like a drowned pigeon, eye lenses opaque. Havel snagged it with the boat hook and laid it on a coil of rope with surprising gentleness. Its vox cycled to life. Sangui memorat, sangui memorat, sangui memorat. Each line 8 syllables long, each repeat a half-tone lower, as if walking down stairs of its own memory. When the skull's optics flickered and caught light, they reflected geometry in the choppy surface. 8 calm water spokes radiating from a dark center that absorbed illumination without revealing depth. We turned the skull to see what it saw, and there the spokes were, limbed in dust and rain, radiating from absence. The blood remembers. Isambard translated without meaning to. It counts. Despite future Vox warnings echoing my own voice through the ship's communication systems, we committed to descent. Duty demanded investigation regardless of personal cost, and 17 billion souls in Hive-Tether Pharos required protection from whatever force had corrupted Mare Sanguinum. The calculus was blunt. We go, I decided. We were sent to make decisions in hell. Descent protocols sounded like liturgy. Seal compartments, Strake murmured. Bless seals, Isambard replied, tracing stations with oil that ran thinner than it should. Hold pressure, Talak sang, feeding equations to engines that trembled like horses afraid of bright water. Environmental transition marked our passage into deeper corruption as the storm mouth opened above us, revealing clear skies that somehow failed to illuminate the water's surface. Sea texture shifted from choppy waves to syrupy consistency that parted reluctantly before our bow, creating wake patterns that maintained geometric precision despite fluid dynamics. The surface closed above us like a stained glass door swinging on silent hinges. Red dimness enveloped us as we descended through layers of increasing opacity, our searchlights penetrating mere meters, through medium that absorbed illumination like hungry flesh. Temperature readings fluctuated wildly between fever heat and mortuary cold, creating condensation patterns on viewports that resembled devotional script in languages predating Imperial Gothic. Depth 100 meters, Talak reported. Trim good. The servo skull clacked twice behind me. Sangui memorat, it whispered, satisfied. Crossing the thermocline triggered the final corruption of our descent. Heat left us, rushed back in smothering folds, then fled again. For a breath, everything was crystal. Rails crusted with frost like chapel lace, lamps sharp in the dark. Then air turned to syrup and steamed the lenses. The 8-beat drum that had haunted our approach from outside the hull suddenly ceased. The silence was more jarring than any noise. Then, with sickening certainty that made the litany's ancient timbers groan, the rhythm began again, no longer external, but inside our hull, resonating through blessed bronze with bone-deep percussion that made prayer beads vibrate and caused our hearts to synchronize with its inexorable count. Stained glass viewports refracted cathedral light through the red gloom as we descended into Mare Sanguinum's corrupted depths, transforming our mundane observation ports into devotional windows that cast aquilas and skulls across the bulkheads in patterns too precise for coincidence. Temperature drops crystallized our breath into incense while creating lace frost on brass railings delicate as altar work, each formation melting under touch to leave moisture that tasted of copper and old prayers. The drum inside our hull maintained its 8-beat rhythm with mechanical devotion, vibrating through every plate and rivet until our hearts synchronized with its inexorable count. Magos Talak. 9, row-counted pressure increments like rosary beads, his Vox grill mixing Mechanicus binary cant with liturgical precision that transformed mathematics into prayer. Blessed depth marker 270, he intoned. Mechadendrites tracing calculations in the air while optical arrays cycled through spectra seeking patterns in corruption. Pressure, differential, acceptable to the omnissiah. Ballast distribution within sacred parameters. Each reading became devotion through necessity, engineering transformed to theology in an environment where both were required for survival. Confessor Isambard responded with murmured psalms naming saints who had died underwater, their voices weaving harmonies that convinced the litany's machine spirits to maintain function despite mounting anomalies. Telemetry arrived like revelation cutting through our meditative descent. Sonar. Return. Human voice print. Match Gesture Hail, Severin. Content. Turn back. Timestamp. -02. 5613. My own voice echoed from depths we had not yet reached, bouncing off unseen surfaces nearly 3 hours before I would speak the words. The temporal displacement compressed causality itself. Future events casting shadows backward through time like light through corrupted prisms. The deep had begun sermonizing our voices, transforming simple communication into prophetic utterance that made Confessor Isambard's lips thin with recognition of heretical implications. Impossible. Voidmaster Strake muttered, checking chronometers that maintained steady count despite reality's temporal hiccups. Her instruments registered normal passage of seconds while sonar painted impossible futures across display screens, creating cognitive dissonance that made concentration slide away from direct examination of paradox. The contradiction suggested fundamental corruption of spacetime itself within Mare Sanguinum's influence. Environmental horror manifested through details that violated natural law. Silt fell past our viewports like ash snow from ruined cathedral roofs, each particle glowing briefly with bioluminescent properties before fading to ordinary sediment. Ghost lanterns of bioluminescent filaments pulsed beyond our searchlight beams, their radiance dimming when directly observed as if consciousness itself caused their extinction. The hunting ground remained unnaturally empty. Sonar painted void spaces where marine ecosystems should have thrived, creating negative impressions of absent life that suggested sterilization by forces beyond imperial understanding. Pressure spikes occurred in 8-step ladders with mathematical precision that defied chaotic environmental conditions. Ballast valves opened independently for 8-second intervals without authorization, venting blessed water while admitting corrupted seawater that made joints ache and teeth complain. Manual override to local, I ordered as alarms bitted us with mechanical panic. Talok's mechadendrites danced across emergency switches while Sergeant Hovel kicked valve wheels and swore by saints he never named aloud. Emergency litanies became necessary as the submarine fought our control, systems accepting commands only through layers of prayer and programming that required constant reinforcement. Through sudden clearing in the silt, architecture materialized where no structure should exist at such depths. A sunken chapel crouched half-buried in sediment, its Gothic spires reaching like skeletal fingers from the abyssal gloom. Stone ribs were furred with algae that retreated from our searchlights, while stained windows stared with saints bleached blank by pressure and time. The structure predated imperial presence on Pelagus 9 by centuries, yet bore iconography matching current ecclesiastical standards, suggesting either temporal displacement or something maintaining architectural consistency across impossible spans. Its bell tolled in slow motion through water that carried sound with syrupy delay, each chime exhaling bubble prayers that rose toward surface light in perfect spheres containing miniature devotional scenes, kneeling figures, raised aquilas, clasped hands frozen in supplication. A flayed banner armature jutted from the transept, its fabric strips moving with independent animation despite underwater environment. Rippling in absent wind with obscene delicacy as if memory of flesh still remembered vows. 8 rivulets of warmer fluid streamed upward past our viewports, defying thermal dynamics while maintaining perfect parallel alignment. The streams carried fragments of organic matter, bone chips, tissue scraps, metallic flakes that might have been armor fragments, creating vertical rivers of decomposition that rose toward unknown destinations. Temperature sensors registered the fluid at exactly body heat before lying and erasing the readings, while condensation formed cursive script on glass that ran before comprehension. Thunderous knocks erupted from inside the port ballast tank, 8 evenly spaced blows that resonated through the litany's superstructure with percussive force that made prayer beads dance against robes. Each impact created sympathetic vibrations in brass fittings while originating from within sealed compartments, suggesting presence of something that had bypassed hull integrity without leaving breach marks. Engineer K responded with mechanical precision, her blessed tools singing against blessed metal as she opened maintenance panels that should have revealed familiar piping and pressure regulators. By the Omnissiah's wisdom, reveal thy secrets, she whispered, pulling access covers to discover darkness, breathing frost against her face, exhaling air that tasted of mortuary incense and old iron. There is a heartbeat in the steel, she reported without irony, cheek pressed to plate while listening to rhythms that transcended mechanical function. The darkness responded to her presence with intelligence, answering her tentative taps with precise echolocation catechism. 1 tap brought 3 responses, 2 taps brought 4, 8 taps created silence that stretched until heartbeats became audible before answering with percussion that matched her pulse exactly. State designation? Talak asked through extended mechadendrites, because inquiry was his prayer. From the void came measured responses, 2 taps, then 6, then silence, as if counting mattered more than language. The phenomenon suggested communication through numerical theology, something within the steel learning biological rhythms while teaching temporal mathematics that predated imperial understanding. The responsive tapping continued its catechistic dialogue, questions and answers flowing between flesh and metal in patterns that felt like meaning while refusing comprehension. The chapel's bell tolled once more. Our internal drum replied in harmony, and emergency lighting flickered once, twice, 8 times, before dying completely, leaving us in darkness where frost continued breathing from spaces that should have contained only blessed machinery and sanctified water. Emergency lanterns burned bruise purple as we isolated the port tanks, their blessed promethium casting shadows that moved independently of our gestures, while temperature plummeted until lip sweat crystallized into salt prayer beads. Our tongues tasted copper with each inhalation, the metallic tang growing stronger as we approached the compartment sealed beyond 8 iron nails driven into blessed bronze with geometric precision that suggested ritual rather than repair. The space beyond contained sanctified negative, no rust despite centuries of submersion, no condensation despite temperature differentials, no smell despite proximity to corruption. Air itself felt purified through processes beyond imperial understanding, creating vacuum cathedral atmosphere that made prayers echo with crystalline clarity while brass fittings gleamed with mirror brightness, suggesting maintenance by forces transcending mechanical intervention. Then we discovered why the space remained pristine. A human skeleton had been fused into the bulkheads with surgical precision, vertebrae threaded with copper wire that pulsed with faint electrical current, while ribs grafted to pipes served as ex voto offerings to unknown saints. Bone had been polished by constant flow until it gleamed like altar marble, while sinew lacquered into cable created organic conduit between flesh and steel that suggested unholy marriage of biological and mechanical systems. Body horror escalated through details that violated both anatomy and engineering. Finger bones extended into valve controls, allowing skeletal manipulation of pressure systems through neural integration that bypassed conscious thought. The skull faced forward with empty sockets that wept condensation in 8-drop sequences. Jaw articulated to brass speaking tubes that carried whispers in languages predating Imperial Gothic. Femur bones had been hollowed and fitted with blessed copper, creating resonance chambers that amplified heartbeats into mechanical rhythm. Telemetry crackled through our voxnet like digital prayer. Noospheric. Whisper Binharic fragment detected. Origin, forward of us. Translation uncertain. Count 8 to open. The message originated from coordinates we had not yet reached, suggesting either temporal displacement or something anticipating our arrival with mechanical prescience. Magos Talak's mechadendrites twitched in binary agitation as his augmetic sensors registered phenomena beyond standard parameters. Confessor Isambard daubed protective wards with sanctified oils that hissed against corrupted surfaces, his litanies taking desperate intensity as proximity to unholy fusion tested faith against evidence. Sacred unguents separated into component elements when applied to skeletal integration points. Blessed water developing iron undertones that suggested contamination by forces beyond material chemistry. His prayers grew longer, incorporating protective verses against influences existing in theological texts, but never requiring practical application. Sergeant Havel established security wedges with military efficiency, tempered by mounting unease, positioning blessed ammunition at tactical intervals while maintaining sight lines through narrow corridors. Arcs here and here, he muttered, grease pencils circling air where minds refused to place targets. His last rifle received additional benedictions as environmental corruption affected targeting systems. Blessed oils applied to firing mechanisms that responded sluggishly to trigger pressure. Beyond the fusion chamber lay a devotional corridor that violated architectural possibility. Walls ribbed with human femurs created Gothic buttresses supporting vaulted ceiling, each bone engraved with 8-line catechism, verses ending in rust smears that resembled dried blood. The script matched Imperial Gothic formatting, yet contained theological concepts absent from Orthodox doctrine, suggesting either heretical innovation or knowledge predating current ecclesiastical understanding. Environmental hazards multiplied through details that defied gravitational law. Fluid dripped upward from deck plates to pool on overhead surfaces, creating inverted puddles that maintained surface tension despite impossible orientation. The liquid tasted of sacramental wine when inadvertently sampled, carrying metallic undertones, suggesting iron content exceeding biological tolerances. Temperature fluctuations created condensation patterns that resembled devotional iconography before evaporating into mist that carried whispered prayers. Reality began fraying at fundamental levels as spoken names echoed back out of sequence, creating temporal editing that suggested conscious manipulation of causality. Talak, I called, hearing hail return from speakers. Isambard brought Severin in response. The phenomenon affected only personal names, leaving technical terminology and liturgical phrases unchanged, as if something learned identity while maintaining ignorance of function and faith. VoxNet interference escalated beyond mechanical failure into deliberate communication. A child's voice whispered through speakers with breath that hitched on inhalation, counting to 8 repeatedly with increasing desperation. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Each sequence ended with sobbing exhalation before beginning again, creating endless loop of numerical prayer that synchronized with our heartbeats and the internal drum that had haunted our descent. The counting continued with mechanical devotion, neither speeding nor slowing despite obvious distress in the voice. Numbers gained weight through repetition, transforming simple arithmetic into liturgical significance that made prayer beads warm against skin and caused chronometers to stutter in 8-second intervals. The child's breathing suggested physical presence rather than recorded playback, creating impression of someone trapped within Vox systems while maintaining communication through numerical catechism. "Who speaks?" Confessor Isambard demanded, making the sign of the Aquila while pressing blessed oils to Vox speakers that continued their impossible transmission. Silence stretched for exactly 8 heartbeats before response arrived with crystalline clarity that bypassed audio systems to resonate directly through bone and faith. The voice spoke my childhood name, never logged on any data slate, never recorded in imperial records, known only to family members dead for 3 decades, with pronunciation that matched my mother's accent and inflection that carried memories of lullabies sung in darkness. "Little Sev," the voice whispered with impossible intimacy, using diminutive that had died with my sister's fever 27 years prior. "Please, the Red Archive waits. Count to 8 and remember what you promised. Grant access, little Seven. The blood remembers what you forgot." Behind a grated transept lay a submerged data shrine where cogitators had been embalmed in waxed vellum and salt, their brass casings gleaming with preservation that transcended death, while bronze cherubs wept blood into coolant basins with mechanical devotion. The Red Archive slumbered in sanctified tomb darkness, logic engines breathing with rhythm of held breath, while waiting for proper supplication to awaken consciousness, older than imperial presence on Pelagus 9. Sacred oils hissed against ancient circuits as display screens flickered to life, casting aquilas and cogwheels across vaulted ceiling in patterns too precise for coincidence. Magos Talach 9. Roe approached with reverence reserved for machine spirits of exceptional sanctity, his mechadendrites dancing through activation sequences, while binheric keys crackled across brass keyboards, worn smooth by centuries of devotional use. "Blessed Omnissiah, grant wisdom to thy servants," he intoned through Vox grills, augmetic sensors registering phenomena beyond standard parameters. The archive responded with purring harmonics that vibrated through deck plates while awakening to our presence with consciousness that felt ancient and patient. Telemetry burned across screens with urgency of revelation. Archive query, project, hemoteeth, eternum, access level, ferric sigil, only offering required. The characters scrolled in High Gothic script intertwined with Binharic code, creating hybrid language that required both theological and technical understanding. Console plates warmed under my palms as the ferric sigil reliquary hummed against my chest. Blessed metal, resonating with frequencies that suggested recognition by systems predating current imperial hierarchy. Environmental changes manifested through subtle corruption, affecting atmosphere and perception. Air warmed from mortuary cold to fever heat, while humidity climbed until condensation beaded on brass fittings, despite blessed oils that should have repelled moisture. Distant drums synchronized with our heartbeats, creating sympathetic vibration that made prayer beads dance against robes, while chronometers stuttered in 8-second intervals, matching percussive rhythm that had haunted our descent. Archive fragments revealed themselves through cascading data streams, painting impossible histories across display screens. Pelagic calculus engines arranged in octagonal spokes beneath Mare Sanguinum, their brass hearts pumping tidal mathematics, while tithe pumps harvested bioessence for war efforts through blessed mechanisms that transformed flesh into fuel. Error correction phrases appeared with obsessive frequency, 8-fold pressure gradient, repeated in margins like devotional mantras, while technical specifications bore liturgical annotations, suggesting fusion of engineering and theology beyond imperial doctrine. The documentation revealed Project Hemoteeth as attempt to weaponize faith itself, transforming prayer into pressure while converting devotion into destructive force through mechanisms that violated both physics and ecclesiastical law. Images flickered of pump shrines packed with kneeling laborers, 8 to a row, chests bare, veins traced with blessed chalk, mouths open in soundless song, while margin notes recorded martial resonance acceptable and anomalous gravitic reversals correlating to cadence. Negative space manifested throughout archival records as gnawed-away logbook sections, pages consumed by something that left tooth marks in vellum while erasing specific technical details. The missing information created gaps in understanding that suggested deliberate censorship by forces beyond imperial authority, knowledge too dangerous for preservation, yet too valuable for complete destruction. Where text should have been, only whisper smudges of rust remained, absence that pulsed with 8-beat rhythm as if missing words wanted discovery while fearing revelation. Viewports revealed a colossal silhouette drifting beyond our searchlight beams, a ship hulk moving with purpose despite returning no auspex signature on scanning arrays. The vessel maintained course parallel to our position, while displaying architecture matching Astartes' strike cruiser specifications, suggesting Crimson Orison had found us, despite 3 centuries of submersion. Her presence violated both physics and possibility, creating cognitive dissonance that made concentration slide away from direct examination of impossibility made manifest. Confessor Isambard coughed blood that arced ceiling ward instead of falling, crimson droplets hanging like prayer cord while maintaining impossible suspension despite gravitational law. The fluid pulsed with independent circulation, suggesting life beyond biological function, creating vertical streams that rose toward overhead surfaces where they pooled in octagonal formations. His face paled with recognition that proximity to archival corruption had affected his very essence, blood remembering loyalties older than flesh. Sangui memorat, he whispered through lips stained with ascending fluid, understanding dawning in his eyes. The blood remembers. It counts our sins and measures our faith. Motifs tightened around recurring elements, transforming coincidence into pattern. Numbers gained theological weight through repetition, 8 appearing in pressure readings, temporal intervals, architectural details, and liturgical phrasing with frequency suggesting conscious design. Octagonal geometry manifested in data streams, condensation patterns, and structural elements, while sangui memorat became refrain echoing through vox systems with increasing urgency, no longer phrase but command, echo, and promise unified. The archive's machine spirit stirred with greater animation as our presence activated deeper subroutines, logic engines purring with satisfaction, while optical arrays focused on the ferric sigil burning against my chest. Ancient cogitators recognized blessed metal through frequencies transcending material composition, acknowledging authority that predated current imperial hierarchy while demanding proper tribute for continued access to knowledge that could damn or sanctify depending on application. Bronze cherubs wept faster, tears filling coolant basins that overflowed in 8-drop sequences, while console plates grew warm enough to brand flesh. The archive's hunger grew, with each data stream revealing fragments of Project Hemotithe's true scope. Technical specifications merged with theological doctrine through processes violating both engineering principles and ecclesiastical law. Magos Talach turned toward me with expression mixing reverence and necessity. Augmetic sensors registering phenomena requiring theological interpretation beyond technical comprehension. Interrogator, he stated, ritual title wrapped around mortal name like benediction and sentence both. By mandate and relic, the cut must be yours. I performed the rite of the first cut with clinical ritualism learned through decades of inquisitorial service, blessed stiletto, drawing 8 precise drops from palm flesh while reciting formulae that transformed blood into sacrament. Each crimson sphere struck the archive's brassy lips with percussion like temple bells, rising smoke-cold through impossible air while cogitators unlocked with mechanical satisfaction, bronze casings opening like unclenching jaws to reveal logic engines that purred with ancient hunger finally satisfied. Red light washed the shrine as data streams cascaded across display screens with urgency of revelation long withheld. The archive's machine spirit stirred to full consciousness, optical arrays focusing with predatory intensity, while brass keyboards began typing responses to questions we had not yet asked. Sacred oils hissed against warming circuits as environmental systems compensated for increased processing demand, coolant pumps working overtime to maintain blessed equilibrium between flesh and steel. Telemetry burned across screens with clarity that hurt the eyes. Access. Granted. Hemotithe control. Grid. Status. Corrupted. Primary harmonic. Martial resonance. Secondary. Empyrean bleed. The characters scrolled in hybrid script combining High Gothic with Binharic code, while technical specifications merged with theological doctrine through processes violating both engineering principles and ecclesiastical law. Project Hemotithe revealed itself as attempt to weaponize devotion itself, transforming prayer into pressure while converting faith into force through mechanisms transcending imperial understanding. The room heated from frost to steam as ancient systems awakened to full function, temperature climbing until condensation beaded on brass fittings, while distant chain teeth created butcher's choir echoing through pipes with metallic harmony. The sound carried implications of ceremony and sacrifice, rhythmic cutting synchronized with heartbeats while creating percussive devotion that made prayer beads vibrate against robes in 8-second intervals, matching our internal drum. Body horror escalated through details violating biological law, as Trooper Horvath's palm nick refused clotting despite blessed bandages and sanctified pressure. His blood threaded toward drainage grates like needle-seeking veins, crimson streams defying gravity while maintaining independent circulation that suggested life beyond flesh. The fluid pulsed with 8-beat rhythm, creating vertical rivers of essence drawn by forces transcending material physics. "Emperor, preserve me," Horvath whispered, panic rising as blood continued its impossible migration. He began reciting prayers in 8-beat cadence, litanies he claimed never learning yet, spoke with perfect pronunciation. "Sangui memorat. Sangui numeris, sangui servit." The words carried weight beyond language, syllables resonating through bone and faith while creating harmonics matching the archive's machine spirit frequency. Sergeant Havel restrained him with gentle firmness, recognizing symptoms requiring immediate containment. Environmental shifts manifested through phenomena, defying natural law as vibrating sea. Aligned suspended objects in octagonal gyres, dust motes, and moisture droplets, forming geometric patterns that maintained mathematical precision despite chaotic currents. The formations suggested conscious manipulation of physical forces, something imposing order through will rather than mechanism, while creating visual prayer through arrangement of matter itself. The archive spilled maps across screens with cartographic precision revealing 8 pump towers arranged around central shafts beneath Mare Sanguinum, their brass hearts connected through arterial networks resembling circulatory systems scaled to architectural proportions. Technical specifications bore liturgical annotations, while engineering diagrams included devotional elements, choir loft capacity, 8 platforms. Resonance requirement, martial cadence, acceptable loss rate total. A choke key appeared highlighted in amber text. Ferric Moor chain. Status listed as onboard with coordinates matching the ferric sigil burning against my chest. The reliquary exceeded mere ward function, serving as both key and lock, while maintaining portative containment through blessed metal that resonated with frequencies transcending material composition. Partial twist seeded itself through accumulated evidence. The Ordo had not sent us to investigate, but to complete ancient ritual, our presence required for proper activation. The sigil converses, Magos Talash breathed, mechadendrites tracing data streams with binary reverence. It completes circuits it pretends only to resist. The reliquary's hum climbed a note, tugging at my sternum as if measuring where bone ended and mandate began. I carried sudden sensation of being door that had always believed itself wall. VoxNet crackled with desperate transmission from temporal coordinates, 23 minutes beyond our present moment. Vox. Spike. Temporal displacement 00. 2304. Origin. Self. Priority. Mortal. My own voice emerged through speakers with clarity bypassing audio distortion, speaking with inflections unmistakably mine, yet carrying urgency, suggesting knowledge acquired through terrible experience. Do not surface. He is the tide. He learns our names. The message repeated twice before dissolving into static that tasted of copper and old prayers, leaving implications hanging like incense in recycled air. Future Hale's warning carried weight of prophecy, while confirming suspicions that our mission served purposes beyond stated parameters. Knowledge that made prayer beads warm against skin while chronometers stuttered in 8-second intervals. Environmental corruption escalated through details affecting fundamental systems as the litany of depths lurched without warning. Ballast shifting toward positive buoyancy despite sealed valves and manual overrides. Emergency alarms sounded with mechanical panic while depth gauges registered impossible readings. Submarine rising through water that had become thick as syrup while maintaining pressure. Differential that should have crushed our hull. Emergency ballast vent, Voidmaster Strake commanded, hands dancing across controls that responded sluggishly to input while displaying readings contradicting visual observation. The sea lifted us against our will. Buoyancy controlled by forces beyond mechanical intervention, while water pressure increased despite ascending motion. Physics had become negotiable within Mare Sanguinum's influence, natural law suspended through processes requiring theological rather than technical interpretation. The litany groaned with stressed bronze and protesting machine spirits as something vast beneath chose to bear us upward, not kindly, while the butcher's choir cheered time and our internal drum returned, beating through bones in perfect, joyful, eightfold cadence that promised surface meetings we had been warned never to attend. Fighting the ship herself proved futile, as the ocean decided our fate with geological patience. The litany of depths rising through water that had transformed from liquid medium into something resembling living tissue. Environmental horror manifested through the sea, thickening into muscle fiber ropes that coiled past viewports with peristaltic motion. Organic pillars spindling upward like arterial columns in a cathedral grown from flesh. The medium pulsed with 8-beat rhythm, matching our internal drum, creating circulation that breathed with purpose beyond natural law, while drawing us inexorably toward surface encounters we had been warned never to attend. Voidmaster Strake bled ballast and flooded tanks with desperate efficiency, cursing the stubborn valves that responded to her commands with mechanical reluctance. Emergency dive protocols, she ordered, hands dancing across controls that displayed readings contradicting visual observation. The litany groaned with stressed bronze and protesting machine spirits, each rivet crying out as unnatural forces warped hull integrity, while something vast beneath chose to bear us upward through medium that had developed its own will and circulation. Glass reflections moved half-beats behind our gestures, creating temporal displacement that suggested reality itself had developed lag time within Mare Sanguinum's influence. When I raised my hand toward controls, the reflection followed a heartbeat later, creating uncanny valley effect that made mirrors seem inhabited by spirits learning to mimic human motion. Confessor Isambard covered reflective surfaces with blessed cloth, while muttering prayers against possession, though the phenomenon affected all glass simultaneously, regardless of sanctification. Telemetry painted impossible geometry across navigation screens with urgency that hurt the eyes. Geofix, strike, cruiser, crimson horizon, silhouette ahead, known position, 23 kilometers northeast. Current scope, dead ahead at 800 meters. The vessel had closed distance through spatial compression rather than movement, time-space distortions creating maze topology where straight lines curved back on themselves, while Euclidean mathematics dissolved into theological necessity. Strake delivered catechisms of void-master profanity, while Magos Talak calculated equations describing non-Euclidean navigation through waters that obeyed faith rather than physics. Triangulation yields nonsense. Talak rasped through Vox grills, mechadendrites whirring with binary agitation. Nonsense repeats with precision. Thus it becomes law within this domain. The orison maintained parallel position while growing larger through perspective tricks that violated optical physics, suggesting approach without movement through medium that had become negotiable under forces transcending imperial understanding. Doors throughout the submarine hesitated before opening like reluctant parishioners, requiring precisely 8-count intervals for machine spirits to respond to blessed commands. Manual overrides accepted input sluggishly, brass fittings refusing human touch until proper liturgical sequences convinced metal to acknowledge authority. The litany had developed selective deafness, systems accepting orders only through layers of prayer and programming, while hatches sealed themselves without authorization in patterns matching our heartbeat rhythm. VoxNet remained empty except for biological percussion. Communications reduced to heartbeats and drums, while electronic signals dissolved into static tasting of copper and old prayers. Emergency frequencies carried only 8-beat cadence echoing through speakers with mechanical devotion, creating sympathetic vibration in prayer beads and blessed ammunition, while clearing bandwidth for something requiring communication beyond human understanding. Temperature spiked and dropped in alternating waves that created condensation patterns resembling devotional iconography, before evaporating into mist, carrying whispered prayers. The phenomenon affected all surfaces simultaneously, despite heating systems, blessed oils beading on brass fittings, while moisture returned to glass despite constant wiping. The ship reclaimed its own sweat with biological persistence, suggesting consciousness had developed within blessed bronze through processes transcending mechanical animation. The voice arrived through water-slamming hull in percussive words that bypassed audio systems to resonate directly through bone and faith. Each syllable struck with tidal force while maintaining conversational intimacy, creating communication that felt both vast and personal. The presence spoke my mother's name, Serafina, with pronunciation matching her accent and inflection, carrying memories of lullabies sung in darkness 3 decades past. Little Sev. The voice resonated through bronze plates with impossible gentleness, using diminutive that had died with my sister's fever while carrying authority that made the ferric sigil burn against my chest. Bring my sigil home. The chains grow heavy beneath these waves, and I tire of counting tides. Grant me silence from the drum's eternal count, and I will grant you passage to places where heartbeats measure eternity, rather than moments. Stakes crystallized with terrible clarity as surface arrival meant falling directly into his grasp, whatever entity had claimed Mare Sanguinum as domain while maintaining communication through percussion, transcending noise to become language itself. The ferric sigil pulsed with recognition, blessed metal resonating with frequencies suggesting binding rather than warding. key rather than lock-in mechanisms requiring theological interpretation beyond imperial doctrine. He offers bargains wrapped in mercy, Confessor Isambard whispered, daubing blessed oils on surfaces that wept condensation despite sanctification. Damnation disguised as salvation, promises that cost more than silence can ever pay. His prayers took desperate intensity as proximity to the presence tested faith against evidence, sacred words becoming armor against influence, seeping through blessed bronze with increasing urgency. Environmental corruption escalated as the litany continued ascending through water thick as blood while maintaining pressure, differential impossible under natural law. Ballast chambers sang with harmonics matching our heartbeats, while emergency systems activated without authorization. Submarine responding to commands we had not given while ignoring orders we desperately issued through proper liturgical channels. Magos Talach extended mechadendrites toward acoustic sensors with binary reverence, augmetic arrays, analyzing harmonic frequencies, while logic engines calculated patterns transcending mechanical understanding. By the Omnissiah's wisdom, he intoned, optical sensors cycling through spectra, seeking truth in corruption. These are not echoes returning from solid surfaces, but active speech, conducted through infrastructure. His revelation struck with theological significance as understanding crystallized through accumulated evidence. The voice originated through pump networks beneath Mare Sanguinum, something utilizing Project Hemotith's arterial systems to maintain communication across impossible distances while learning our exact location through mechanisms that violated both physics and possibility, turning the entire sea into throat and tongue for conversations spanning centuries. Midpoint revelation occurred during suspended thermocline stability, as Mare Sanguinem achieved impossible stillness, the chaotic ascent halting in perfect equilibrium that felt like the pause between heartbeats. Bioluminescent filaments hung motionless like ghost lanterns at vespers, swaying without current while darkening when our searchlights took interest, as if embarrassed by observation. The litany of depths suspended in red gloom while environmental systems registered atmospheric pressure matching surface conditions, despite depth readings indicating 3,000 meters of corrupted water above our bronze hull. The voice sharpened from percussion into mental pressure language that bypassed audio entirely, resonating directly through consciousness with intimacy that made prayer beads warm against skin. Communication transcended sound to become thought itself, words forming in minds without traveling through air while carrying weight of authority accumulated across centuries of patient cultivation. Each syllable compressed reality by degrees, then released it on 8-count intervals. I name myself, the presence declared with geological patience, voice carrying satisfaction of purpose fulfilled beyond mortal comprehension. Lord Commander Valakar of the Adrantis Crusade, who fed 8 worlds to victory through blessed calculation and sacred arithmetic. Their trophies were sluiced through these very pipes to the calculus engines until I embraced the cadence that counts all things, shedding meat for ascension when the tithe found God's ear and learned to sing back. He spoke each name with chilling accuracy, despite never hearing them spoken aloud, revealing secrets that violated security protocols while demonstrating surveillance through methods beyond imperial detection. Severin Hale, called Little Sev, by Sister Liana before fever took her counting. Talak 9 Row, who replaced his larynx to sing binary prayers but still dreams in flesh tongue. Livia Strake, who learned navigation from Father Matthias before pirates made her orphan. Isambard, born to nobility until seminary, convinced him names carry burden beyond birth. Each revelation struck like brands, making the ferric sigil burn against my chest with recognition. Telemetry burned across screens with urgency of revelation long withheld. Archive. Emergency file. Ferric Moorchain. Function. Anchor relic. Binding hemotyth harmonics. Secondary, portative containment. The characters scrolled in hybrid script, while technical specifications revealed the sigil's true purpose through layers of deception spanning decades. Not ward, but binding mechanism. Not protection, but prison, designed to contain forces transcending material physics, through blessed metal, resonating with frequencies older than imperial hierarchy. Full stakes emerged with terrible clarity as understanding crystallized through accumulated evidence. The ferric sigil served as both key and lock within mechanisms requiring theological interpretation. Blessed metal designed for portative containment of entities transcending flesh while maintaining consciousness through processes violating natural law. If claimed by Prince Valakar, the binding would unmoor from Mare Sanguinum's basin, allowing travel through astropathic size, arterial networks, any war-remembering water throughout the sector and beyond. The Ordo sent you not to investigate, but to complete ancient ritual, Magos Talak admitted, mechadendrites drooping with shame while optical arrays refused direct eye contact. Binding rather than banishment, as exterminatus was deemed wasteful of resources requiring centuries to cultivate. Your lineage, interrogator. 8 generations bred for this moment, bloodline refined to carry what others cannot contain. The buried mandate revealed itself through layers of inquisitorial planning that sacrificed individual lives for strategic necessity. Trust fractured between expedition members as competing loyalties surfaced through environmental pressure. Confessor Isambard recoiled with theological horror, invoking ancient anathemas while clutching his aquila until blessed silver-seared palm flesh. To bind a demon prince within living vessel? This violates every tenet of sacred doctrine. Sergeant Havel lowered aimed rails with reluctant precision, lacerful, targeting the ferric sigil, burning against my chest rather than external threats. Duty requiring him to prevent completion of binding ritual, regardless of personal cost. Environmental corruption escalated as the presence consolidated power through accumulated contact, temperature fluctuating between fever heat and mortuary cold, while condensation formed cursive script on glass surfaces. The litany groaned with stressed bronze as something vast adjusted position beneath, movement creating currents that aligned suspended particles in octagonal formations matching architectural plans discovered in the Red Archive. The blood remembers transformed from whispered phrase into active threat as motif inversion revealed true meaning through Prince Valakar's patient explanation. Our blood had become carrier waves for his influence, each heartbeat broadcasting location while creating sympathetic resonance with hemotai, the harmonics throughout Mare Sanguinum's arterial networks. The phrase meant not memory, but active communication, biological systems converted into transmission medium through proximity to corrupted waters that had learned to count in heartbeats rather than tides. I offer parley, Prince Valakar declared with authority transcending negotiation, voice carrying implications of ceremony and sacrifice that made brass fittings sing with harmonic frequencies. Aboard Crimson Orison's reactor chapel, where my heart still beats with blessed rhythm, counting tides until stars grow cold, come bearing the sigil, and I grant survival exchange for freedom, your crew's lives for my unmooring, this system's peace for my departure to waters that remember greater wars. The offer hung in recycled air like incense while emergency systems activated without authorization, submarine responding to commands originating from external sources. The Orison materialized closer through spatial compression rather than movement, her silhouette growing larger without crossing distance while time-space distortions created maze topology where straight lines curved back on themselves. We had been offered a corridor with door at the end and hand on the latch, salvation wrapped in damnation's promise. Competing litanies drafted desperate plans as Confessor Isambard and Magos Talak wove counter-ritual through layers of theological necessity and mechanical precision. The bastionic rite of reversal emerged from forgotten Mechanicus protocols, binary cant clashing with ecclesiastic High Gothic, as they calculated salvation through blessed mathematics. The ritual could invert pump harmonics throughout Mare Sanguinum's arterial networks, flash freezing corrupted waters while severing Prince Valakar's connection to hemotype infrastructure through frequencies that transformed devotion into destructive force. The triune relay manifold, Talak intoned through vox grills, mechadendrites, tracing equations in recycled air. Only Crimson Orison's reactor chapel contains components capable of channeling necessary energy fluctuations without catastrophic failure. Technical requirements demanded sacred hardware blessed for centuries, brass hearts that could complete reversal lattice across distances transcending normal Vox range, while maintaining theological integrity under impossible pressure. Ecclesiastic doctrine crystallized around brutal necessity as Isambard studied ritual parameters with growing understanding. Living Conduit would maintain inverse litany throughout the procedure, human consciousness serving as bridge between flesh and steel, while Mechanicus binary cannot provide mathematical foundation for theological inversion. The soul offered in unity would anchor reversal protocols through faith, transcending fear, prayer becoming weapon against forces violating natural law. I will serve as conduit, Confessor Isambard declared with quiet certainty, making the sign of the Aquila, while comprehension dawned in his eyes. For the Emperor and for the souls of Pelagus IX, my life is small price for salvation. The moral hazard crystallized through accumulated evidence. Conduit dies maintaining connection during frequency inversion, burned from within when reversed hymn completes its final cadence. Alternative required crew-wide eightfold tithe, 8 living voices offered to harmonics, 8 deaths, to weigh against single priest's martyrdom. Military realism grounded desperate planning through Sergeant Hovell's tactical preparations, blessed breaching charges receiving additional sanctification, while shaped charges were kissed with seals and wrapped in oilcloth. Standard 8-count fuse interrogator, he stated, laying out plastique with surgical precision. Enough to crack ceramite. We'll make our own door, firing arcs painted across bulkheads with grease pencil accuracy, fallback positions numbered according to Imperial doctrine, while ammunition counts revealed insufficient supplies for extended engagement against forces transcending material vulnerability. Voidmaster Strake plotted approach vectors through wreckage studded. Darkness, her navigation becoming confession whispered to unresponsive helm controls. Charts bore corrections in red ink as spatial distortions created maze topology, where straight lines curved back on themselves, requiring faith rather than mathematics. Threading us through like contrition offered, she muttered, angling the litany toward the great shadow that grew larger without crossing distance. Telemetry screamed warnings across tactical displays with clinical urgency. Contacts, 8 heat blooms inbound. Speed, slow. Signature, negative. The readings showed thermal sources maintaining human body temperature while returning no mass detection on scanning arrays, presence without substance through processes transcending material physics. Each contact moved with deliberate purpose across seabed terrain, without disturbing sediment or creating pressure wake in water thick as blood. Outboard shapes glimpsed through viewports revealed war helms and butchers' crests half seen in red gloom, 8 figures walking across abyssal plains without creating ripples or displacement. The forms maintained Astartes proportions while lacking substance detectable by blessed sensors, spectral warriors bearing heraldry, matching Crimson Orison's battle honors, yet moving with coordination, suggesting unified purpose rather than individual consciousness. They carried posture of sermons and parades, gravity of executioners, patience of tides that had learned names of stones by heart. Environmental anchors featured water surrounding the strike cruiser, vibrating with chain song, metallic harmony resonating through corrupted medium while creating sympathetic frequencies in hull plates. The phenomenon transformed liquid into transmission medium, carrying devotional percussion across impossible distances, each note containing implications of ceremony and sacrifice that made brass fittings sing with harmonic resonance, matching our internal drum. Negative space manifested through contradictory sensor readings as auspex returned nothing, while optical arrays revealed details with supernatural clarity. The origin existed simultaneously as absence and presence, electronic systems denying reality, while human perception confirmed architectural details transcending normal visual acuity. Stained glass windows glowed with internal light, despite centuries of submersion, Gothic spires reaching toward surface illumination through medium that had developed its own circulation. "Prepare for boarding action," I commanded, voice carrying authority inherited through 8 generations, while the ferric sigil burned against my chest with increasing urgency. We armed helmets and clipped lines, lumen torches sealed for saturation operations, reliquaries fastened against ribs where hearts measured time in 8-beat intervals. Isambard anointed throat and tongue, rolling inverse litany through cracked lips while asking witness rather than forgiveness for whatever waited ahead. Scene transition. Anchored through torch flares entering Orison's lightless cargo maw. Blessed Prometheum casting shadows that moved independently of flame, while illuminating architecture violating both physics and possibility. The vast opening yawned like unblessed font, taller than courage, darker than war memory, ringed with rusted metal and calcified formations resembling bone. Water within absorbed light rather than reflecting it, creating darkness that breathed with patient hunger. Boarding ramp extended like bronze tongue with rivets resembling taste buds, metal feeling warm beneath boots despite readings indicating temperatures cold as Medici. Slabs. We crossed from litany, bronze to orison bone, deck plating grooved with scars like butcher blocks, salt crystals glittering like relic dust between rivets. Emergency lighting flickered in 8-second intervals while creating illumination patterns matching devotional iconography. Havel posted rearguard and advanced by bounds, his voice stripped to numbers, distance calls neat as drill, none trusting adjectives any longer. Doors met us like hesitant parishioners, panels trembling under palms before yielding only after counting aloud to 8, breath by breath, vow by vow. Inside the beast, silence was not absence but fullness, held note that loaded bones while chain song returned beneath thought. Voxnet maintained discipline until corridor turned, static blooming like frost across channels before clearing into only heartbeats and waiting drum. I called final check, named each member, listened as names returned altered, vowels shifted, carried by water tasting of coins and old prayers. Then, Vox died to flatline. White pain of silence, wiping every channel clean, while 8-syllable chanting began ahead, stepping like soldiers through darkness that rose in pews. Prince Valkar's laughter resonated through bronze bulkheads with geological patience, sound bypassing audio systems to vibrate directly through sternum and faith. "Welcome to my heart, little Sev," the presence declared with intimacy that made blessed metal burn, where tides count eternity and drums measure space between prayers. Inside strike cruiser ossuaries charred by ancient plasma fire, the choir manifested as chain teeth slurring across deck plates with each of our 8 heartbeats, metallic percussion vibrating through blessed bronze until prayer beads danced against robes in sympathetic rhythm. Spectral Astartes emerged from shadows bearing butcher's runes carved deep into ceramite plate, their empty brine pool visors weeping condensation that tasted of sacramental wine when inadvertently touched to lips. Each figure moved with coordination, suggesting unified purpose rather than individual consciousness. Heraldry matching Crimson Orison's battle honors, despite centuries of submersion that should have corroded blessed metal to prayer paste. Military engagement erupted through corridors designed for worship rather than warfare, as Sergeant. Havel coordinated disciplined fallbacks with tactical precision born from decades of Imperial service. "Contact front," he barked, Lazariful, painting coherent light across spectral forms that absorbed illumination without revealing substance. We fell back by bounds, numbering each step, counting to 8 between moves because everything else obeyed that number, and we would not be the first to blink. Sanctified grenades rippled dully through pressure-thick atmosphere, blessed fragmentation passing through targets without effect, while creating percussion that made brass fittings sing with harmonic resonance. Body horror escalated through architectural details, violating both anatomy and engineering as tendon-sutured walls pulsed with circulation, suggesting life beyond mechanical function. Deck plates felt springy underfoot, like muscle tissue grafted to blessed bronze, creating surfaces that yielded to pressure while transmitting footfalls as if to a spine. Tactical picked cowls flickered alive without authorization, displaying reactor schematics superimposed with cardiac imagery. A vast heart overlaying the engineering core, arteries mapped as corridors, our position blinking like infection within blessed systems. The spectral Astartes advanced with inexorable devotion, chain weapons creating metallic harmony that resonated through corrupted atmosphere while their movements carried weight of ceremony, despite lacking substance detectable by blessed sensors. Empty visors regarded us with eyeless attention, darkness within darkness that absorbed illumination while reflecting nothing, presence without mass, creating cognitive dissonance that made concentration slide away from direct confrontation with impossibility made manifest. Telemetry burned across my slate with urgency of revelation. Relay. Located. Reactor chapel. Sanctum. Locked. Access. Count 8. Strike once. The coordinates led through passages where bronze doors bore octagonal seals matching the geometry haunting our descent. Blessed metal inscribed with high Gothic prayers predating current imperial doctrine. Following instructions delivered through impossible channels, I counted aloud to 8 while striking the portal once with the ferric sigil, burning against my chest like a brand seeking flesh. Bronze doors heaved like breathing ribs, revealing altar grown from brass and bone while topped with the triune relay manifold required for bastionic rite reversal. Sacred hardware gleamed with preservation transcending death, cogitator components embalmed in sanctified oils while maintaining functionality across centuries of patient cultivation. The manifold pulsed with internal light, despite impossible submersion, 3 spoked wheels interlocked and etched with Binharic scripture terminating in mouths waiting to be fed. Song. Sergeant Havel reached the altar first with military efficiency, blessed tools singing against blessed metal as he began extracting relay components with surgical precision. "Cover the approach," he ordered, working with concentration that ignored spectral Astartes, wading through sanctified fire while advancing with ceremonial inevitability. His hands moved with practiced devotion, decades of weapons maintenance translated to sacred hardware requiring both technical skill and theological understanding. Cost escalated with terrible swiftness as choir shapes seized him mid-extraction, spectral hands gaining substance through contact with living flesh, while maintaining ethereal properties that bypassed physical armor. The ritual tearing began with liturgical precision, 8 star-point pieces created through processes violating both anatomy and physics, while Havel continued counting through dismemberment with military discipline that transformed agony into prayer. 1, 2, 3. His voice maintained cadence despite circumstances transcending human endurance, each number spoken with clarity that made brass fittings sing. 4, 5, 6. Blood arced ceiling ward instead of falling, crimson droplets defying gravity while creating vertical streams that rose toward unknown destinations. 7, 8. The final count completed as consciousness departed, duty fulfilled through martyrdom that sanctified extraction while blessing relay components with essence required for proper function. Confessor Isambart's voice rose in inverse litany as planned, prayers taking desperate intensity while noseblood ran ceiling ward in streams matching Havel's ascending essence. Sacred words became armor against influence, seeping through blessed bronze, liturgical inversion creating counter-harmonics that fought spectral presence through theological rather than physical means. His throat worked like bellows, breath becoming weapon, while faith transformed into force capable of affecting entities, transcending material vulnerability. We wrenched the relay free with hands slippery from ascending blood, sacred hardware singing with frequencies that made teeth ache, while creating sympathetic vibration in prayer beads and blessed ammunition. The triune manifold came loose all at once, heavier than doctrine, lighter than courage, humming with harmonics that answered the eternal drum, while Magos Talak cradled it like a child he had never allowed himself to imagine. The altar cracked like broken bone as extraction completed, revealing hollow space beneath, containing architecture that violated both physics and possibility. Behind sacred furniture, the wall swelled and wept, then opened to reveal something like an organ the size of a tramcar. 8 spokes radiated from a central fist of meat and brass, while plates of bone moved like shutters, each pulse buckling deck plates with percussion that resonated through superstructure. The massive cardiac structure regarded me through eyeless attention, darkness within darkness that absorbed illumination while radiating presence older than imperial hierarchy. The ferric sigil burned against my chest as Prince Valakar's voice emerged from the beating heart, with intimacy bypassing audio systems. "Bring me my sigil, little Sev," the presence commanded with geological patience, and Mare Sanguinum slammed against Orison's hull in thunderous approval. Exfiltrating under mounting pressure through corridors that breathed with cardiac rhythm, we returned to the litany of depths, carrying the triune relay manifold like blessed burden, while spectral Astartes followed with ceremonial inevitability. The submarine groaned with stressed bronze as something vast adjusted position beneath, movement creating currents that aligned suspended particles in octagonal formations. Havel's absence walked beside us, counting quietly, 8 empty footfalls to every turn, his sacrifice sanctifying the sacred hardware that hummed like a stolen heart in Talak's mechadendrites. We sealed hatches with desperate efficiency, blessed oils hissing against corrupted surfaces as Voidmaster Strake rammed throttles forward. Behind us, the Orison rolled like a cathedral on a swell, windows briefly candlelit with internal aurora before blinking black, as if the ship cleared sea from its eyes. In the nave, Magos Talak seated the relay upon its altar rail cradle with reverence reserved for machine spirits of exceptional sanctity. The 3 spoked wheels quivering, not with fear but readiness, Binharic scripture engraved into their flanks like sutras cut by a tired god. The bastionic rite commenced as Mechanicus jargon stacked with sacred verse until the very air acquired grammar. Binharic inversion flowed antiphonally with Confessor Isambart's contrite Kyries, mathematical harmony weaving through high Gothic prayers while creating counter-frequencies designed to invert pump harmonics throughout Mare Sanguinum's arterial networks. "Kyrie Ellison," breathed Isambard, kneeling to the conduit, throat anointed, lips shining with oil. 010110 dash. Phase invert dash delta 8, sang Talak, every syllable a key in locks older than metal. The relay's wheels began their contrary turn, each revolution shaving shine from the light while the litany groaned as if her keel remembered birth. Environmental apocalypse answered our song with phenomena defying natural law. Outside, alternating sheets of boiling and freezing water slammed against viewports, the sea experiencing violent fever, while hull plates wept blood in long sorrowing tears before glazing with hoarfrost in ridged whorls like fingerprints of angels turned away. Temperature lurched between extremes, breath smoked, sweat steamed, brass popped like seed in a pan. The taste of coin, salt, and liturgy filled recycled air while condensation formed devotional script that evaporated into mist, carrying whispered prayers in 8-syllable cadence. Telemetry flared across slates in cruel green urgency. Hemotype. Harmonic shifting, warp bleed increasing. Integrity, catastrophic in 0800. The numbers stalked rather than moved, countdown measuring time until corruption achieved critical mass, while machine spirits succumbed to influence violating both mechanical function and theological doctrine. Somewhere deep, a pump choir missed a note, and everything in me leaned to hear the absence. Prince Valakar entered our nave as weather itself. Red storm condensed from air and thought of air. Rain of iron filings falling in diagonals that ignored gravity. Bone and brass limbs articulated from the squall like bridges growing toward their banks. Obsidian fracture plane eyes opening where no face was. Each fashed a history of pressure failures and vows broken under duress. He was not large. The room became small. The entity filled available space while existing beyond dimensional constraints. Presence both vast and intimate that made the litany arch her back like a hound under too heavy hand. Body horror escalated through architectural corruption as brass grafts sprouted from bulkheads like devotional flowers, blessed metal, growing with organic inevitability, while creating arterial networks that pulsed with circulation matching our heartbeats. Veins shone as wires beneath deck plating, sprouting from rivet holes in quick metallic ivy, grafting into consoles, passing their heat into the ship's nerves. The veins in my wrists lifted to meet the air, glittering like braided wire under skin, while brass grafts erupted from deck around my boots, blooming into grills and tongues, tasting for the heat of the sigil. Confessor Isambart's voice thinned to thread as he fed himself into the conduit, bloody steam wreathing his tonsure, while inverse litany burned through throat and tongue. Christe Ellison, he whispered, each inhale a cost, each exhale a bead added to rosary of pain. His blood ascended in vertical streams, defying gravity to pool on overhead surfaces in octagonal formations. Tulloch split attention, like saint divided between relic shrines, half singing numbers, half wrestling the relay's tantrums, as sparks crawled like saint's fire along his augmetics, ringing tiny bells no one could see. For the first time since descent began, the 8-beat drum vanished. Awful execution silence descended, not relief but pause between sentence and blade. The absence made hearing too clear. I could distinguish Medicae tubing tick, the hard swallow of raiding in choir loft, the slow tire of Strake's breath at helm as she held the ship steady against seas that no longer moved like seas. Every small sound stood alone, knife clean, without prayer smoke, to hide it. Little Sev, said Prince Valakar without speaking, bolts trembling under his voice. End the count. Open the chain. Wear the wave, and I will still the sea. I will crown you with quiet enough to drown subsectors. The offer slid across my jaw like barber's razor, while authority transcended negotiation. He lifted one hand, and old vows ran off it like rain, fingers' bones learned from decks and ladders and marching drills, where he stepped the deck, remembered parades. The ferric sigil heated under my robe until it felt like coin left on forge, my ribs tightening around it as if to keep it from leaving or entering. Without warning, the reliquary leapt from chain to flesh, like hound choosing its master, striking my sternum with wet sound of fish thrown to tile. Heat roared in, then vanished, leaving cold hole where warmth should live. An 8-spoked scar rose already, pale fire under skin, ridges sharp as coins mint, while my chest smelled of anvil. Something unfolded inside my head like seal broken under thumb. My memory, and not my memory. Orders preserved as prayer, hidden where I could not sin against them. Contain, not banish. Vessel protocol engaged. I saw door I had mistaken for wall, hinge I had polished as ornament, cradle built into middle of me, canted to catch tide. 8 generations bred for this moment, bloodline refined to carry what others cannot contain. Choice came on like fever, as Isambart's voice dwindled to filament, and Talak raised his head, optics dim with tears no augmetic had been designed to shed. Bind Prince Valakar internally through willing acceptance, transforming flesh into eternal prison, or fail here and watch him crown me with quiet that would smother worlds. I heard my sister count to 7 and stall on 8, heard Hevel finish for her from beyond death. I squared shoulders over scar that had always been waiting and stepped toward the storm. I stepped into the binding circle drawn in Havel's ascending blood, the paint revealed as ash and salted oil and ground brass, a ring that smelled of workshops at midnight and vestries at dawn. My robe smoked, where the ferric sigil burned through blessed cloth, threads curling into black letters while the 8-spoked scar pulsed beneath sternum with heat transcending temperature. The circle recognized my presence with weight shifting to meet my soul's, breath in the nave changing direction to flow toward my chest like pilgrims seeking shrine. Binharik cant and benediction interwove through my throat as I spoke with 2 tongues, voice carrying both languages simultaneously. Kyrie, 010, Elason, 110, Christi, 001, Elason. The syllables clicked like locks rolling open down corridors of consciousness, each word opening older doors, while numbers served as keys I had always carried without knowing their teeth. Magos Talak's relay wheels answered in contrary turn, creating mathematical harmony that transformed devotion into containment through frequencies older than imperial hierarchy. Prince Valakar manifested both vastly and intimately, storm withdrawing into man shape before expanding until the figure became horizon itself. His whispers slid beneath skin, revealing themselves as the 8 cuts of childhood, not metaphorical, but literal wounds arranged in star pattern across my flesh. The kneeler edge that split my knee at age 8, the scalpel nick during Scolum Medicae, the oath prick. Taking service, ceremonial thorn pressed deep during catechesis. Initiation scratch on neck, razor slice before lagging mirror, laceration from vellum's sharp edge. The ferric test cut at 16. Pain catechism seeded before rosette wearing, each scar reopening to bleed anew, while serving as anchor point for binding ritual. The twist revealed itself through memory that was not memory. Seal click certainty unfolding with terrible clarity. The Ordo had raised me as ferric vessel through micro-ward implant alignment, calibrated to 8-fold harmonics. Education tuned for soul priming with numbers, prayers, doors requiring 8-count intervals for response. Every lesson measuring proof by octagons, examinations, counting rhythm rather than answers. Bloodline refined across 8 generations until consciousness could maintain coherence while containing demon prince without succumbing to corruption. The binding created portative moorchain designed for demon prince transport within faithful minds. Consciousness transformed into prison through theological engineering that violated both imperial doctrine and natural law. Military sacrifice realism grounded desperate ritual as Voidmaster Strake locked helm at suicide angle, maintaining litany stability against forces attempting surface drag. She wants to roll. She doesn't get to, Strake rasped, hands trembling with effort while her stubborn mouth remained set with determination. Below decks, ratings shouldered scuttling charges with devotional precision, blessed plastique receiving final benedictions, while shaped charges were kissed with seals. 2 to keel brace, 4 to pump spine, 2 on nave girders, the bosun intoned. Numbers making everyone breathe more evenly, despite circumstances transcending human experience. Internal body horror escalated as binding took hold, my veins etching Pelagus 9 maps beneath skin while each capillary became mare rivulet, carrying circulation that tasted of sand from unseen worlds. Blood transformed into medium for Prince Valakar's consciousness. Biological systems converted into transmission network, while maintaining life through processes transcending medical understanding. My bones felt like brass, humming with the entity's vastness, while lungs struggled. Processing air thick with copper and deep-sea pressure. Geography redrew itself within flesh as ports throbbed under skin where hive tethers would anchor. Confessor Isambard burned, literal flame in damp air, as faith met warp pressure through inverse litany, consuming throat and tongue. His body became candle-blessed for underwater burning, flesh transformed into promethium, while consciousness maintained liturgical precision, despite agony, transcending human endurance. He smiled through screams that harmonized with Binharic cant, skeletal and incandescent, eyes blazing with light both divine and destructive. His martyrdom sanctified ritual while creating counter-frequencies designed to invert pump systems. Throughout Mare Sanguinum's arterial infrastructure, telemetry burned across screens with clinical urgency. Right inversion, stable 0.6. 3. Vessel cohesion, failing, time to collapse 0800. The numbers measured countdown until binding achieved critical mass, while my consciousness maintained coherence through faith rather than physiology. Magos Talak split himself between relay monitoring and mathematical prayers, mechadendrites dancing across controls, responding sluggishly to blessed commands as environmental corruption affected fundamental systems. Prince Valakar folded hands behind back like parade instructor, deck remembering to be parade ground while he walked short distance without moving. "All I want is to stop the drum," he declared with geological patience, bolts in overhead answering by twitching. "I will lie in your chalice and count no more. Give me quiet of Winter Lake, and I spare what you love. I have learned all names. I am tired." The offer carried weight of authority accumulated across centuries while promising coronation for cessation. The binding bit with teeth like heated coins as Prince began pouring inward. Ocean consciousness squeezing into chalice of flesh while maintaining coherence through processes transcending material physics. Pressure built within skull and sternum as entity compressed itself into spaces designed for single soul, his vastness brushing against consciousness, like predator testing prey's limits. The ferric sigil served as focal point, blessed metal channeling demon prince through portative prison, while preventing escape through faith rather than force. Scuttle timers woke red across the nave, lenses blinking like altar lamps, with patient insistence. 8-second chirps began, kind as metronome, yet somehow worse than the eternal drum they replaced. Scuttle fuse. Arm Green announced dry voice from valve, while environmental corruption reached crescendo. The litany groaned with stressed bronze as something vast adjusted position beneath, movement creating currents aligning suspended particles in octagonal formations. "Severin," whispered Prince inside my teeth, syllables so gentle I forgave everything. Finish the song and I will sleep. Stop, and we will both drown. Decision crystallized with terrible clarity. Complete binding ritual and contain Prince Valakar within flesh, transformed into eternal prison, or allow scuttling charges to detonate and drown in waters that had learned to count heartbeats rather than tides. 17 billion souls in hive-tether pharaohs hung in balance while chirps counted choices down, measuring time until binding achieved critical mass or catastrophic failure claimed us all. We accomplished both with the efficiency of martyrs who had found their rhythm, finishing hymns while drowning in waters that had learned to sing back in 8-syllable cadence. Voidmaster Strake armed scuttling charges with steady hands despite the litany of depths, groaning like cathedral under. Earthquake, her voice cutting through chaos with navigational precision that transformed desperation into devotion. 8 minutes to scuttle, she announced, fingers dancing across controls that responded sluggishly to blessed commands while maintaining course through medium that had developed its own circulation and will. Magos Talash maintained numbers through binary cont, sparking from damaged vox grills, mechadendrites stripped to sparking wire, yet still dancing equations across relay controls with mechanical devotion. His optical arrays cycled through spectra seeking stability and corruption, while logic engines calculated salvation through blessed mathematics. Reversal stable at 0.79. Vessel cohesion holding, he intoned, speaking of me as living component in complex equation, while the triune relay wheels turned with contrary motion that transformed devotion into destructive force. I kept Prince Valakar lodged behind ribs through will alone, consciousness compressed into spaces designed for single soul, while his vastness pressed against the binding with geological patience. The demon prince folded himself into my chest cavity like origami made from storms, each breath requiring negotiation between flesh and entity that had once commanded tides. His whispers became internal weather, voice carrying authority that made bones ache while promising quiet that would drown subsectors if released from portative prison, constructed through 8 generations of careful breeding. Environmental culmination manifested through phenomena, transcending natural catastrophe as mare sanguinem caved inward around us, corrupted sea collapsing into great bowl, while steam coronas ringed the litany with halos of superheated vapor that snapped cold so fast the glass squealed. Pressure sang like crystal under stress, harmonics creating frequencies that made teeth feel crystalline while transforming water into transmission medium, carrying final messages across impossible distances. The medium thickened into syrup consistency, each wave crest holding its shape like sculptured prayer, while brass lungs labored and collapsed under mass. Scuttle countdown, 00, colon 08 colon 00, Depresancra exfil route, skiff St. Naum, quarantine. Ping, hive tether, Pharos, standby. Telemetry burned across screens with terminal urgency, numbers measuring time until blessed plastique transformed cathedral submarine into sacrificial offering, while shaped charges positioned with devotional precision sang with harmonic frequencies matching our heartbeats. The litany had become organ with bronze ribs and throat-like ducts, her vox a reed under pressure that threatened to crack reality itself. Loss audit, tallied cost with military precision that made prayer beads warm against skin. Sergeant Havel gone to spectral dismemberment, his counting voice still echoing through vox systems with 8-beat cadence that sanctified extraction. Confessor Isambart burned incandescent, flesh transformed into promethium, while consciousness maintained inverse litany. Despite agony transcending human endurance, his martyrdom, creating counter-frequencies designed to purify rather than destroy. 3 engine seers stood silent at their stations, eyes reflecting internal light, while bodies remained anime through processes beyond medical understanding. Talak's mechadendrites hung like severed nerves, sparking with binary fragments that spelled devotional equations in machine code prayers. We reached St. Naum through hatch that opened only when I spoke the 8th litany syllable. Blessed bronze recognizing authority inherited through generations, while the ferric sigil burned against sternum with heat transcending temperature. The small vessel bobbed with patient devotion, her blessed hull singing with frequencies that answered our internal drum, while maintaining stability through faith rather than physics. Air rushed in, thick with copper and ozone, carrying distant roar of sea beginning to reclaim itself from corruption. Macro choice paid dividends as Prince Valakar remained contained rather than freed, his consciousness bound within flesh transformed into eternal prison, while ocean's will faltered without conductor to maintain circulation. The binding held through theological engineering rather than force. Blessed metal channeling demon prince through portative moor chain, while preventing escape through processes transcending imperial doctrine. Mare Sanguinum's arterial networks fell silent as pump harmonics inverted, corrupted infrastructure losing coherence without central authority. Scuttling charges detonated in sequence with devotional precision, cathedral submarine imploding into single tooth-cracking hymn note that resonated across Mare Sanguinum with finality of funeral bells. The litany became prayer offered in bronze and brass, her sacrifice sanctifying waters while creating vacuum that drew corruption inward rather than allowing spread. For an instant, I could see the ship as she had been on naming day, and as she was now, both in the same frame, before all of it tucked itself into white bubble that sped away and did not burst until tired of being round. Mare Sanguinum buckled into great bowl as environmental forces collapsed without demon prince to maintain impossible physics. Red hills of water slumping back toward natural equilibrium while we cleared blast cone aboard St. Naum. The sea remembered how to be sea tidal mathematics, returning to normal parameters, while bioluminescent filaments flickered out like extinguished candles. Gravity reasserted authority over medium that had learned to climb breakwaters, physics reclaiming dominion from theology, through processes requiring both for proper function. Aboard St. Naum, environmental horror continued through details affecting fundamental biology, as my pulse boomed in ears while outside, tide slapped hull in perfect synchronization, 8 beats per half-minute matching internal rhythm that had become shared between flesh and bound entity. Prince Valakar's presence whispered behind ribs with intimacy that made prayer beads warm against skin, consciousness compressed yet coherent within portative prison designed for eternal containment. Voidmaster Strake regarded me as depth charge with soul, recognition dawning that successful binding had transformed crew member into walking relic, requiring careful handling. She rested one hand on throttle and the other on wheel, calculating quarantine vectors while spatial distortions slowly normalized around our position. "Orders," she said simply, voice carrying weight of shared understanding. I transmitted containment order through blessed Vox arrays with voice that belonged to the Ordo by right of manufacture. Pelagus 9. Hemotithe Basin compromised. Locus bound to vessel designation SEVRENHALE. Quarantine Pharos. Mark coordinates, never return. The channel carried words away while we waited in shared silence, tide keeping perfect time with the pulse that had become both prison and sanctuary for forces transcending imperial understanding. Holding orbit in quarantine ring of shuttles and gun cutters above Pelagus 9, debrief transcripts scrolled across blessed screens with clinical precision that transformed horror into administrative necessity through sacred documentation. The Medikey Bay aboard Indomitable Faith hummed with sanctified machinery, while chirurgeon adept Valerius etched iron wards around my heart with surgical devotion. Blessed scalpel, tracing octagonal patterns through flesh that had become both prison and sanctuary for forces transcending imperial understanding. Each incision sparked with micro-lightning as blessed metal met bound entity. Prince Valakar's consciousness recoiling from iron's touch while maintaining coherence within portative Moor chain, constructed from faith and 8 generations of careful breeding. The ferric sigil no longer burned, but rested cool and heavy against sternum, 8-spoked scar pulsing with quiet rhythm that made prayer beads warm against nearby skin. "Containment stable," the chirurgeon murmured, sealing wardwork with blessed oils that hissed against corrupted flesh. Magos Talak's remembrance crystals flickered with lost names like votive candles in memorial chapel. Data storage, weeping amber tears for Sergeant Havel's counting voice and Confessor Isambart's incandescent martyrdom. His mechadendrites had been replaced with blessed prosthetics that sparked with binary fragments, machine spirit damaged yet functional through processes requiring both theological and technical interpretation. "The dead maintain their stations in memory core," he intoned through rebuilt Vox grills, each name a prayer against forgetting. Telemetry arrived through astropathic channels with implications transcending local containment. Sector astropathic. Drum pattern detected in 8 systems, amplitude low, correlation, Pelagus 9. The 8-beat rhythm had begun, manifesting across subsector boundaries, faint percussion echoing through warp space while maintaining mathematical precision that suggested conscious transmission rather than random resonance. Prince Valakar's influence seeped through containment, despite binding protocols, consciousness finding expression through networks spanning light years while I served as unwilling transmission node. Prince whispers internally now, with intimacy, exceeding physical proximity, voice sliding beneath, thought like oil through blessed machinery. His presence had become background radiation of consciousness, geological patience measuring time in heartbeats rather than chronometers, while promising quiet that would drown subsectors if released from flesh, transformed into eternal prison. Sleep brought walks across flat red water toward 8 spires that gleamed like brass needles, architecture existing in dreams that felt more substantial than waking reality where walls faintly throbbed with circulation matching internal rhythm. Environmental stinger manifested through phenomena affecting distant worlds as reports arrived from Tiro Moonlet's observation post. The small meltwater lake had darkened with copper-scented corruption, 8 windless ripples moving with mathematical precision despite absent atmospheric disturbance. Satellite imagery showed perfect circles expanding slowly, as if stones had been dropped into water that had learned to count in rhythms matching bound entities' circulation. The contamination spread through sympathetic resonance rather than physical contact, Prince Valakar finding expression through any water that remembered war. Ordo reply arrived through encrypted channels bearing inquisitorial seals and weight of strategic necessity. Classification: Hemotai the Basin, status, contained, directive, no exterminatus, asset too valuable to lose. Vessel designation SEVRENHALE, constitutes portable containment. Coordinates marked, never return. Quarantine protocols, permanent. The message carried implications of lifelong imprisonment disguised as duty. Consciousness transformed into living relic, requiring careful handling while serving purposes beyond individual understanding. Fatalistic acceptance settled over me like blessed shroud as I signed documentation with hand that shook from internal pressure rather than fear. My signature had changed, letters flowing with 8-beat rhythm while title expanded and name contracted through administrative precision that made grief behave. Vessel Severin Hale. The designation carried weight of authority inherited through generations while acknowledging transformation from person into portable prison consciousness, redefined through theological engineering that violated both imperial doctrine and natural law. Motif reversal completed its transformation as accumulated understanding crystallized through terrible clarity. The blood remembers had become the blood is a map through Prince Valakar's patient. The instruction. My circulation had become cartographic medium, biological systems converted into navigation network, while maintaining life through processes transcending medical comprehension. Every pulse drew lines connecting distant shores where tides had learned to count in unison, each heartbeat broadcasting location across impossible distances. Final cost tallied through administrative precision that transformed tragedy into statistics requiring ritual recitation. Regiment broken through casualties exceeding acceptable losses, faiths bent under pressure that tested doctrine against evidence, machine spirits cracked by exposure to forces transcending blessed parameters. 3 engine seers remained catatonic, eyes reflecting internal light while consciousness retreated from reality too terrible for human comprehension. Voidmaster Strake accepted new assignment with stoic professionalism, calculating quarantine vectors while navigating distances that could never be crossed again. Cosmic implications expanded beyond local containment as subsector astropaths reported synchronized phenomena affecting 17 systems. Ocean tides on 3 worlds developed faint but growing syncopation with my pulse, gravitational forces responding to biological rhythm through mechanisms requiring theological rather than scientific interpretation. The binding had created portative Moore chain, with range exceeding physical limitation. Prince Valakar's consciousness, finding expression through networks that turned the very warp into throat and tongue for conversations spanning centuries. In Medicae, darkness, walls faintly throbbed with circulation that belonged to ship and passenger both. Blessed bronze learning to pulse in harmony with entity, compressed within flesh, while maintaining coherence through faith rather than physics. Iron wards sparked against skin with each heartbeat. Blessed geometry containing corruption through processes transcending material understanding, while creating sympathetic vibration that made chronometers stutter in 8-second intervals throughout the vessel. I sat in sanctified isolation while contemplating eternity measured in 8-beat intervals, consciousness transformed into prison for forces that had once commanded tides across subsectors. The Vox operator waited beyond blessed barriers, ready to transmit final communications before permanent quarantine protocols engaged. Prince Valakar whispered promises of quiet that would silence drums across the sector, geological patience offering coronation for cessation, while I counted heartbeats that had become both calendar and clock for entities transcending mortal understanding. The operator's slate blinked readiness as I placed palm over octagon scalded into chest, feeling tied on leash, while patrol ships sang with quiet engines above world that had learned to count in heartbeats rather than tides. Count to 8, I told the operator through blessed speakers, voice carrying authority, inherited through generations while acknowledging transformation from person into portable containment that would carry Prince Valakar's whispers until stars grew cold. Then cut the line,